Today, I'm talking to you, the professional that has been doing your work for 15, 20, 25, even 30 years. And you sit down in an interview and you feel like a fraud, like you don't deserve to be there. This is something I have seen as a former recruiter, and it trips a lot of people up. I call this imposter moments. Now, this is different than imposter syndrome, which you might have heard of. And that's this pervasive feeling that you are a fraud, that you haven't earned, the accolades, the titles that you have been given because you're actually just an imposter in that role. I'm not talking about that because many of you have felt very successful in the roles. You've known the people, you've known the job, you have had great success, but something has changed now. The world has changed for you. Maybe you're in a very, very long job search, or you were laid off, and now you don't necessarily feel as confident. And so you go into an interview and something happens. The recruiter says something, the hiring manager asks you a question, and you start feeling like a fraud. Like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be in this interview. Maybe there's something wrong with me. That is what I call imposter moments. And what happens is it often causes you to do things that you wouldn't normally do, like starting to ramble or feel defensive. So today we're going to talk about 3 imposter moments that I have seen as a former recruiter and how you can handle them successfully, because I want you to succeed in your interviews and show your value. So let's talk about how you can do that. Often you get imposter moments when it comes to a company culture. So let's say you're interviewing with a company that feels like it's a little faster than what you're used to, maybe a little younger. Maybe it is just different from where you came from. And they use terms like fail fast or scrappy. And you have come from an organization that's not slow, but it's a little bit more structured. And you're in this interview, and the recruiter says to you, we're a pretty fast organization. How are you going to be able to adapt to that? And you start feeling like, oh, this could be a problem because I need to do something different in this interview than I'm used to. So sometimes that may mean that you start getting a little bit more high energy because you think you need to match what the organization is. That feels unnatural. Or you say things like, I thrive in chaos, when actually you don't thrive in chaos. And that is going to hurt your chances because that recruiter is going to understand that that's not really who you are. And so they're going to think something is wrong here. Here's what you should be doing instead. You don't need to be a chameleon. What you need to do is bring your value to the organization. Your value could be that, yeah, sometimes organizations are a little chaotic, but what I do is I bring some order to that chaos. I'm not against moving fast, but I'm for moving fast with structure, with purpose. And so you want to be who you are because that is your value. So this is how you would respond to that question from the recruiter. I know your culture is about moving fast and taking risks, and that's great. I believe in moving fast by having a solid foundation to do so. Now, my goal is to see the problems ahead of time so the organization can go even faster without hitting a wall. And, I've adapted to 3 different company mergers in the past. So these are all different cultures that have come in. And I love a new challenge, but I always do so with keeping my eye on the goal of the organization. You can say something like that so that you actually feel it, but you bring a value to the organization of that structure. Now, one thing to know, if they don't want that, that's okay, because you will not thrive in that organization if you're trying to be something you are not. So show how you can be a help to them, that you can be a value to them by being you. If you enjoy this content, I always appreciate hitting that like button and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It really helps. The second situation where imposter moments happen is often with length of service or length of tenure. And these are questions that you might get because you've been with your organization for many years. And they're wondering about that and whether you can adapt to a new situation. So you might get a question like, you've been with your organization for 14 years, and we're wondering and how you would adapt to a new type of organization. Okay, legitimate question. But what you hear and where your imposter moments come in is, oh, did I stay at my organization too long? Have I been in a bubble and I don't understand other organizations? And what you may do as a result is you start defending yourself for being with the organization so long, or you might even apologize about it, thinking, making up excuses for why you stayed longer than you should have stayed. None of that is very helpful. What you need to do is think of your tenure at an organization as actually multiple different organizations, because most organizations change over time. I recently talked to a client of mine who actually has gone through 3 different CEOs with 3 different business models during that time. So it wasn't like one continuous same. It was different requirements, different leadership, all of that within the same organization. So that happens to most organizations. They change every 3 to 5 years. So what you need to do in your answer is really explain to the recruiter that you have been through a lot of changes and that makes you adaptable. So you might say something like this. I know 14 years looks like a long time on paper, but I didn't stay in the same role. During that time, we had 3 leadership changes and 2 major technology shifts. Every time the company evolved, I had to prove my value all over again. Now, I'm somebody who knows how to stay relevant even when the business is changing around me. You don't need to apologize for being with an organization for a long time. You just need to understand that you have evolved with that organization, and your value is being able to do that and bringing that to a new organization. The third imposter moment that you might have in an interview is when you've been laid off and it's been months. And the interviewer asks you, I see that you last worked with your organization 6 months ago. What have you been doing since then? And all of a sudden, you feel very defensive and maybe even a little shame. Well, what have I been doing? Well, obviously, you've been working on your job search, but you might think, well, what can I say so they don't think that I've been just watching TV? And what can happen is that you start getting defensive in your responses. So you might feel defensive about your job search, explain more about the layoff and what happened. Again, not the question that was asked. Or you may even talk about consulting work you did, even though you haven't had any clients. Now, the thing to remember about layoffs, and especially being in a job search for a while, that it's something that many people are in. Even your recruiter or hiring manager may have been in that situation. And what they're looking at is just, what have you been doing? They're just curious about it. So what you want to do is talk about how this has been a time for clarity for you. So you have been able to do some much needed self-assessment and reflection, and that this is going to help you to know when an opportunity is right for you and that you will be able to do the best job you can for that organization. So what you want to do is say something like this. I decided to take this time to pause and reflect on what I do well and what I like to do. I wanted to be very intentional about where I put my energy next. And I spent this time identifying exactly where my strengths and motivating skills fit best, which is actually what led me to this conversation today with you. I'm not looking for any job. I'm looking for the right challenge. And that's a great way to answer this question. Flip it to, I know what my value is. I know what I want to do. And you are the organization where I can do this best. Imposter moments happen because we're human. You have been looking for a job and your situation has changed, but it doesn't mean that you have any less value for an organization. You don't have to act like a chameleon and you don't need to apologize for your past. You bring value to that organization. You just have to remember to have confidence in that. So when you start feeling that imposter moment, first of all, acknowledge it. Say to yourself, yep, I'm feeling it. Then take a pause. You want to just reflect on you are in the right place. You have value. And then pivot to some of the scripts that I have talked about in this video. Be prepared. Figure out what you want to say ahead of time for that situation. You've spent many years being an expert. Don't forget that. You don't need to be anything other than who you are and what you bring to the organization. Remember, you might be the answer to their problem. So make sure you act like it. If you would like some help with preparing for an interview, I have more information about my interview prep services in the description box.